My name is Tracy Shaw, and I would like to start off today by having a little setting and scene for you. I'm going to recite two paragraphs to start, and the first is from a New York Times article when Cannery Row, the movie, came out in the 80s. And the second, if you can guess what it's from, you get extra points. In 1982, Herbert Gold wrote, "Reality is not necessarily really real. The legend of Cannery Row, palpable if imagined, is still present and resonating on a short sandy stretch of beach from which the sardines and the sardiners and the sardineries have passed away into a fished-out heaven. Steinbeck land, Doc and Dora and the booze and crustaceans and philosophy and the overarching memory of the silvery fleets of little pilchards have returned to a sort of invented meta-reality, a place where a few got rich, but the picturesque hordes cleaned and packed and struggled and remained poor. Cannery Row in Monterey in California is a poem, a stink, a grating noise, a quality of light, a tone, a habit, a nostalgia, a dream. Cannery Row is the gathered and scattered, tin and iron and rust and splintered wood, chipped pavement and weedy lots and junk heaps, sardine canneries of corrupted iron, honky-tonks and restaurants and whorehouses and little crowded groceries and laboratories and flop houses. And I am honored to be here today to tell you about a tiny piece of that world. The world of Cannery Row's infamous madam, Flora Woods.
I regret the day
Our famous madam was born Maria Florina Silva on April 9th, 1876 in Carmel Valley, California. Her parents were Manuel Vieira de Silva and Maria Costanares, and she was the ninth of 14 children. Her dad was born in 1837 on the Flores Island in the Azores in Portugal, in the middle of the Atlantic. And when he came to America, he rounded the South American Horn and it arrived in Monterey by 1860. By 1863, he was one of those Portuguese whalers that we saw in those last pictures. And in 1863, he married his wife, Maria Costanares. He ended up passing away February 15th, 1893, by drowning in the San Jose Creek here in Carmel Valley. Maria Costanares was born in 1847 here in Monterey. Both of her parents were immigrants from Mexico City, and Maria and Manuel bought 207 acres in Carmel Valley in 1890. This ranch is where Flora grew up, and she probably worked very hard as a child and even might have attended the Little Red Schoolhouse on Highway 1. Here are a couple of her siblings that I have found on Ancestry.com. One of my cousins actually has taken a great deal of labor and work to put together a wonderful family tree. So this is her elder sister, Lily, her younger brother, Antone, and her older brother, Frank. And here we also have her brother, Joseph. Down below it says Grandpa Silva, not Grandpa Silva. Hopefully he wasn't too grumpy as a person. Charles Woods was Flora's first husband, and he was born in 1865. It's told that he was over 6 feet tall. He had long, wavy black hair, which hung over his shoulders. It's said that he was very robust and strong and could ride anything with more than 2 legs. He became one of the most well-known vaqueros and cowpunchers in the state, and he rode a horse named Dynamite. He married Flora May 31st, 1895. He was also an intrepid cowboy. He rode with Buffalo Bill in the Wild West show, but quit because he didn't like to show off. He did have some trouble with alcohol. They had one child, Anita, who will be known as Nettie from here on out during the presentation. And when Nettie was 9 months old, he committed suicide by overdosing on laudanum at the Union Saloon here in Monterey. He was found in a back room, and he evidently didn't want to die with his boots on because they were very neatly placed next to him. And, he does live on in infamy because Flora does name the Lone Star after him, as he was from Texas. Nettie is Flora's only daughter, only child, and she was born April the 4th, 1868, when Flora was only 20. Like I just mentioned, her father did commit suicide when she was only 9 months old. She spent her early childhood years until about 4 or 5 with her grandmother, Maria, at the ranch in Carmel Valley, while her mother went and worked as a prostitute in Watsonville and Salinas. She didn't think it was a very good life for her daughter to accompany her on, so she had left her with her grandparents there. Her mom, Flora, did come back when she was about 5. And she moved around with Flora from Carmel to Watsonville to Salinas to Watsonville to Monterey. She tells of stories when she was living above Kelly's Saloon as a child. And they had a very tumultuous relationship for the rest of their life. Nettie's first daughter, whom she had out of wedlock, we call her Dolly, but her real name is Lorraine. She was born in 1913 when Nettie was 17, before Nettie marries her husband, Eugene Shaw. Dolly is really taken under Flora's custody and protection for most of her life because she does end up having 8 other half siblings, because Jean and Nettie had 8 children of their own. Here's a wonderful picture of Nettie and Jean from 1920, when they're new and in love and recently married the first couple of years. Here's a picture from about 1930 of Jean and Nettie's oldest children. Lorraine is in the middle. Dick is on the left-hand side, and Charlie is on the right. So now we're going to talk about Flora's famous brothels. So Flora did work as a prostitute until about 1917, when she decided that she could do it better and run it better than anybody else. So she opened the Quick Lunch, was the first one that she had, where it was said that you could get a quick sandwich and a roll in the hay. The earliest date I saw, because there were many floating around about the Lone Star, Flora's famous Cannery Row brothel, was that it opened in 1924. And I got that information from the Monterey Peninsula Herald. She also had the Golden Stairs. I know that she had another brothel for sure in Seaside, but family lore states that she had houses from here to Alaska, and Dolly ended up helping her run them. They were also, the covers were that they were laundries. So that's pretty interesting to me. I have a couple pictures of those, the old pictures, obviously. This is the Lone Star, and right there in the middle, that one-story building by the warehouse, that is the Lone Star as it existed back when Flora was running it as her house. Here's a floor plan of the Lone Star. So, Flora's raised chair on the end of the bar is definitely infamous. It was said that she could barely fit on it, but that's where she kept watch over everything and made sure everything was going right as the night's parties would go on. And as you can see, there's a bunch of bedrooms and the kitchen there in the back. It looks like a good time joint. So, doing all of this research, I found in the National Steinbeck Archives in Salinas, there's all of these audio archives that, pretty much anyone can go and listen to at any time. And there was an interview from a reformed prostitute who wanted to remain nameless. So in the archives, they just call her Flora's Girl. She regales us of tales about, she saw Ricketts and Steinbeck come in many times when they had run out of beer. And Flora and Ricketts particularly were very close friends. He would look out for Flora and she would look out for him. It said that he'd never messed with any of the girls, but if Flora ever needed anything, she could call on him. There's even Flora's Girl reported that she had heard a rumor that Ricketts had even performed an abortion for one of the girls at the time. Here's the present-day Lone Star on Cannery Row. So Flora's Girl also said, she gave some details about what it was like at the Lone Star. And she said that Flora sat on the stool on the left-hand side. She was very, very generous with, not only the girls, but with the entire public. Their rooms themselves were very simple, but Flora's room was always very gussied up, with Victorian-era furniture and nice materials. No one called it the Lone Star. Everyone just called it Flora's. And she said that there were many other houses in King City to Salinas to Monterey that they would actually switch girls so they would trade faces. So that the Johns that would come in wouldn't get sick of the same girls all the time. So this is another one of present day where one of her brothels were in Monterey, and this is the Golden Stairs. The Seaside brothel that she had actually has a very interesting story attached to it. So at the Lone Star, they had some neighbors, the Manaka family, who were a Japanese family, and back in the day when Flora was, having her big parties and lots of late nights, Royal came over and knocked on her door one morning and wanted to talk to her because his wife had been really sick, and he didn't know what to do because the noise was keeping her up and she wasn't getting any better. So what Flora did was that she traded him houses, so put them in this old seaside brothel so that they could get away from the noise at night that the Lone Star was creating. And she had them pay a very minimal amount every month, and they were very happy for a long time. In 2013, I believe, the Monterey Weekly put out an article about this story, and Hero, the wife, was still living. And she said that, down in the basement, there was all these, when they moved in, there was all of this prohibition type booze and stuff from the parties that they used to have there during Prohibition. Santiago Dominic was Flora's second husband. I don't really know all that much about him. They were not together for all that long. They were married in 1919. They had been living apart since 1922. Santiago left without cause, and they were divorced by 1923. And here's a little article about that. Here's another little article from 23 where the raid was conducted on her on the Lone Star property, so she had a big-time lawyer from Salinas come out and defend her, which his name is obviously Pedro Zabala. This article is the in Cannery Row. There's this great paragraph where where there's this guy. He's in her house and he's saying, "Oh, I'm going to kill myself," and she says, "Well, you better not get any blood on the rug." And this article really reminded me of that because there was a former soldier that came to live with her in her real home, and he wanted more money and she wouldn't give it to him, so he plunged an ice pick into his heart and died. And that was March 6, 1933. So I'm going to make a little aside here. This is where things get really interesting for me. So this little story I'm going to tell you in the first person because this was very important to me. So when I was a kid, my dad is Nettie and Jean's youngest child. So he was born in 1935 in March, actually. And the entire time he was living, and he passed away when I was 11 in 1995, he never mentioned a word about Flora. He didn't want me to know anything about her. There were, all of this family. The family did not like what Flora had done for a living. My grandmother, Nettie, did not want anything to do with Flora. And I heard it was just because she didn't like what Flora had done for a living. And when Flora passed away and died, she gave Nettie her written memoirs, and Nettie burned them. So I just thought that was terribly tragic and, burned up all of this history. So I always said, well, if I were to write anything, I would write what could have been or what might have been in those memoirs. So, I took it upon myself to start doing research. And I found out the real reason that Nettie and Flora did not speak. So this is where the trial comes in. On November 2nd, 1935, the lawsuit was filed to injunct and abate the property at the Lone Star Cafe on Cannery Row by the Shaws, by Nettie and Eugene Shaw, against Flora. And this was unprecedented because there was never a daughter in history that ever wanted to have her mother pigeonholed as a keeper of a house of prostitution, ever. It was just not looked well upon, so it was just unprecedented at that time. But no one really knew why, and it turns out, on the first day of trial, they realize it's actually about 7-year-old Dolores Shaw. And so in the Monterey Trader, this whole trial plays out on the front page. And as you can see kind of right in the middle, it says, Flora Woods, political girl, is cited for battle in Girl 7. So this is Flora Woods and daughter in bitter battle for tiny girl. The court intervenes, takes custody of child pending the outcome of final hearing. They got into a nasty dispute, which played out on the front page of the newspaper. Flora Woods said she had political pull, and I couldn't get my daughter back. The words fell like a bombshell in Superior Court H.G. Jorgensen's courtroom last Saturday morning during the testimony of a mother who claims that her child is unlawfully being kept from her by Mrs. Woods Dominic, who is the child's grandmother. And so Flora was saying that she had been giving the family provisions for years, and she stopped, and now they were trying to retain custody over the child to get back at her. We don't know why Flora was why she had cut them off from the money that she had been giving them, but they were in business in the Lone Star property together. Nettie took out the liquor license because Flora couldn't get one at the time. So I think things were just a little bit complicated. During Nettie's trial testimony, that's where all of the information came out that I went over a little bit earlier about Nettie's childhood and what it was like for her to grow up with Flora as a mother. Though they were close, they did have a very tumultuous relationship, and by this point, by 1935, Nettie thinks that she wasn't that great of a mom. This is a great front page because over on the left-hand side, then there's a big article, New Deal for Custody of Girl sought by Flora. And then in the middle, that little cartoon there, I'll blow it up for you in a second. But Flora has a little cartoon, which is pretty funny to me. So the headline is, the probation officer recommends child guardianship be turned over to couple living at grandmother's lakeside home. And that is Joseph Silva, Grandpa Silva from before, and his wife. And the red light abatement proceedings invoked to put padlock on one of Flora's joints, but the two others are not affected by the court order. And then so here's the blow up of that little cartoon, the golden rule in Monterey. Monterey Trader, I want my forced subscription stopped immediately because Flora's starting to get really angry that her business is being publicized on the front page of the paper. But the public at the time was just eating it up. So, this was a little cartoon where it says, she'd like the Lone Star subscription canceled, the Golden Stairs subscription canceled, her personal subscription, and George McMillan, who was the deputy sheriff in Salinas, canceled. And Flora loses custody of girl. Dolores actually went on the stand and told her version of the story. She did not lie at all. She was very sweet. They asked her all of these questions like, have you been inside your grandmother's place of business? Because Flora said that she hadn't, she had never. And she's like, yeah, I go in all the time. And they're like, oh, well, did they teach you to sing and dance? And she says, yeah. And they say, oh, well, were they dirty songs, Dolores? And she says, no, they weren't dirty. But, it was very sweet, and everybody was very impressed with her candor. And Flora ended up losing custody over Dolores. But it turns out that Dolores was actually ruled a ward of the court. I guess they found that both parties were not favorable when it came to parenting, and this little article says that Judge Jorgensen requested that the location of the home that she would be put in, a private home in Monterey County outside of the Monterey Peninsula, would not be revealed, saying, "We would like to give this little girl a chance to grow up and live a normal life." He added that her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Shaw, her grandmother Flora Woods, Dominic, and Mrs. Juanita Silva, that's Joseph's wife, who had petitioned to be guardian of the girl, could all see her, but only in the presence of the woman she would live with. And here's a more recent picture of Dolores, probably taken in the late 70s or early 80s with her kids and grandkids. Does anyone know who this is? This is Walter Winchell. So Walter Winchell was a very interesting reporter back in the 30s and 40s. His style of writing was very jazz age and spectacular. And the Monterey Trader, after Flora's case is all wrapped up, hears that Flora is starting a boycott against the Trader, against the people that are trying to advertise in the Trader. So they go Walter Winchell on her, which means, so right kind of on the middle left side, it says Trader starts local Winchell service as Flora opens boycott. So this article reads, "Flash, it's exclusive, sensational, stupendous, colossal. The Trader's newest feature. Watch for it, wait for it, read it and weep. Here's the dope, folks. Flora Woods, we are reliably informed, has launched a boycott against the Trader. Half a dozen merchants who have from time to time have advertised in this newspaper have been informed that they will get no more of Flora's trade if they buy any more space in the Trader. That apparently is the result of the Trader's newest recent news articles, editorials, and a cartoon in which Madam Woods, her chain of houses of ill fame, and her self-asserted political pull were handled without gloves. Well, okay, Flora, the merry war is on. Hop to it. Run us out of town if you can. That's been tried before by experts, and we're still here. Nevertheless, have a go at it. We'll all have a lot of fun. And incidentally, you'll discover before it's over that you've been in a battle. Starting with next Friday's issue, the Trader will publish each week a list of the cars and visitors who patronize Flora's Emporiums. Descriptions of visitors to the Golden Stairs, the Golden Restaurant, and the Lone Star. Possibly pictures of even the more prominent guests, and even a cartoon or two will be used to give our readers the full benefit of this new service. The newest feature, we believe, will surpass interest to our subscribers." I just thought that was too funny. So Flora really, now gets upset, and the city is forced to shut her down. Nobody wants their picture in the paper. All the people that really were on her side just have to say, we got to step back for a minute, and we can revisit in a little while. So. This wasn't all too new. I mean, there's raids, they get shut down, they open up again in another month or two. She takes all of her girls to Carmel, they hang out, in a home, and then they come back and they start it all over again. So it wasn't too crazy, but Flora did not like all of that publicity. Flora is remembered a couple of different ways. She really enjoyed Ed Ricketts, and I know that the jazz festival guys always kept a special place in their heart for her. So Eldon Dedini is an artist. He was a Playboy cartoonist, and he did this mural, which was up on Cannery Row for a little while. I'm not actually sure quite how long, but it's entitled Flora's Girls. And actually, I kind of have a funny story about that too. My best friend and I, when I was about 20, were walking, just up Cannery Row randomly one day. Had come over just to, spend the day in Monterey. And we walk past the mural, and I go, "Oh, that's my great grandma." And she just turns to me and is like, "What? Like, how? Why haven't you told me this before?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, it just didn't seem like it was that big of a deal." But it turns out she is a big deal. This is another little poster that Didini did. Flora's, and she's holding up some Politico by his armpits, and and it says on the bottom, "It's our business to do pleasure with you." I think that's pretty cute. That's actually hanging in my house right now. And in 1936, here's just another little article. Can Monterey find an honest and sensible way to regulate prostitution? And they talk about the DA and Flora, and which they didn't find an honest and sensible way to regulate prostitution, and ended up shutting it all down. This was in January of 36, and like I said, they closed and opened the joints all the time. And we know that Flora was in business until at least 1941. So the Lone Star close wasn't really it wasn't an end all. 1938, here's another little article. For the first time in history, the Monterey Police Department this week cracked down on Flora Woods, the boss of the Monterey's prostitution racket for a quarter of a century. Several of Flora's girls were arrested. So in 1944, Lorraine Shaw, so Nettie's daughter, was murdered by her husband in a murder-suicide. They had 3 children, and the 3 kids ended up going to live with Nettie and Jean. Pretty tragic. Here is the second photo I have of Flora of 3. This is obviously like post-World War II. Probably pretty shortly before she ends up passing away. But yeah, these guys look pretty cute. I'm not sure who they are, but obviously I think that guy's military. Flora is buried. She passed away in 1948, and she is buried in the Encinal Cemetery here in Monterey. There are often shoes on her grave. Because Flora really loved shoes. So one little cool thing to do if you're ever out there is bring a pair of nice shoes, from the Goodwill or something, and leave them there for her, because that I know makes her happy. Nettie, so this is Nettie. I'm going to talk a little bit about where her life went after she ended up cutting her mother off after that trial. And she and Jean, lived together happily until their deaths. But Nettie had clothing stores. She opened clothing stores on her own. They were called Annette's. She ended up opening the Cottage Kitchen, which was a restaurant down in like the beach flats of Watsonville. And one cool thing that she did in 1968, which that's where this article comes into play, is that she made all of the food for the first space flight. And it said that she was scrambling 90 eggs at a time. She made 1 ton of rice, 1 ton of 2,000 pounds of macaroni noodles. She would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning for like 3 weeks in a row and make them before the restaurant would open for their regular service, and drive it over to the dehydration plant in Watsonville. And when she was asked, well, how did it go? She says, well, I wouldn't do it again. And that just made me laugh, because I'm exactly the same way. I'm like, how hard can it be? And I end up jumping into these things I have no business doing. And after I read this article, I realized where that came from. But I love that picture. Here's another little sweet picture of Nettie and Jean holding one of their grandkids in the 60s. Nettie passed away in 67. She's buried in the Pajaro Valley Cemetery with Jean, and also my dad is buried there. This is Dick Shaw. This is we saw a picture of him as a child a little bit earlier, and he ended up running Shaw Frozen Foods plant in Watsonville, and he came to fame when the Watsonville canning strike happened. here's a picture of all of, the grandkids, Flora's grandkids and their partners. Dick's there on the left. We have Yvonne and Charlie right in the middle, and my dad, Dave, is on the right-hand side. Mildred on the bottom left, she's one of the Lance children that came to live with Nettie and Jean after her parents were murdered in that murder-suicide. That's my dad's in the Pajaro Valley Cemetery. Getting this whole thing together was really interesting. I got to go up to the Stanford University White Glove Archives, and I could just show up, and I got to take out the original handwritten Cannery Row manuscript, the pencil manuscript, and the typewritten manuscript. So I just snapped a couple of pictures of the place where they talk about Dora. So this is obviously the handwritten one. Dora is a great big woman with flaming orange hair and a taste for Nile green evening dresses. That's great. It's a great paragraph. Typewritten. Flora's also remembered in the Cannery Row movie. Audra Lindy played her, so I wanted to include a picture of that so you all could see how she's remembered.
Tracks. I know. Don't tell me. You got the family with you, huh?
This
nice
has
to
audio.
meet you folks.
Okay.
I'm Flora, the madam of the Bear Flag Restaurant. Folks say you can fill all your appetites here at the Bear Flag. They also say I'm an exceptional businesswoman. I'm very generous to the poor families all over town. It's been said that I've helped finance more than one struggling cannery owner over the years. Come on back and see me.
Well, so that is Flora in the Spirit of Monterey Wax Museum down there on Fisherman Wharf on Cannery Row. And it's a pretty kitschy, funny place to go down and check out. It's not very expensive, so you kind of get what you pay for here. But I thought it was pretty funny, and I'm glad that Flora's represented in there too. And probably the most famous memorialization of Flora is her in the big statue. So up at the top we have obviously John Steinbeck. Down there, right, kind of 6 o'clock, we have Ed Ricketts, and then on the right is Flora, and one of her girls is the girl sitting, with her legs kicking out. But she's memorialized in bronze, which is very cool to me. So the next thing, the last thing I kind of want to talk about, in 1969, there was a tribute in memory of Flora. And so the Eclampus Vitus, this historical organization, dedicated a plaque to Flora. And the Monterey Peninsula Herald wrote an article about it, and I think it's absolutely hysterical. So, a tribute in memory of Flora. Flora lives, sort of. You remember Flora. She operated the most famous house in Old Monterey. Old Monterey. And Saturday, a loose organization called the Eclampus Vitus dedicated a bronze plaque at the Custom House Plaza to Flora's memory. Why? I don't know. But the Eclampus Vitus likes to dedicate things. And as I said, it's a loose organization. Very loose. The whole miserable ceremony began with a march from the Colony Club, wouldn't you know, to the plaza. The march was led by the Eclampus Vitus Band, a terrible band, unbelievably bad. They hit sour notes with regular, monotonous regularity. Some were playing one song, others playing others, sort of. Music was nowhere around. Most of them wore suspenders and red shirts, all wore red noses and crummy-looking pants. One fellow was stomping on imaginary huge bugs. He dispatched quite a few. Another kept hearing dirigibles overhead, and he continually peered up in the sky. I couldn't see any. Still another kept saying, look at me, I'm twisting." And he was, not the dance, just standing still, all screwed up tight with his face behind his shoulders and his, well, never mind. But that that was the way it was. You kept looking behind you. The head of the ECV organization, is it organized, is William C. Marsh, and he paid tribute to Flora as being one of Monterey's greatest madams. And that's kind of nice, because can you think of another one that deserves a plaque? The end.